Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a 6'3" man who has very Germanic traits, but I'm actually born in Vietnam, so I'm a Hapa myself. So for me to do Vietnamese projects is not it's kind of a non-issue. I was born there, and I've traveled back to Vietnam quite a bit. So what's been interesting in the last I'd say 8 years has been the growth of Vietnamese cinema. As the social economy has kind of exploded there, there has been more opportunity for investors and opportunity for filmmakers to really explore media through TV and film. And some Vietnamese Americans, myself and some friends of mine who have studied abroad in the U.S., have gone back to Vietnam to tell new stories.
So do you have any interest, at least in the future, of actually doing a film that would be here in the U.S., or is your heart really in Vietnam to do films?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think as a filmmaker, it's like whatever story you want to tell best at that moment with the most passion. I had wanted to do a film in Vietnam. I started working there in the late 90s as a lighting technician on other indie films and also doing some camera work. I would go back, and I always thought, I'm going to do a film here. I'm going to direct a film here. So that there was a story that I needed to tell. And I followed my first feature, Owl and the Sparrow, with another tale from Vietnam about youth culture and dance. Now I'd like to kind of change the landscape a little bit. So I'd like to work in Europe, and I'd like to work in the U.S. And I know that eventually I'll do another film in Vietnam.
So, I mean, that totally makes sense, though. It's like, it's the story. If the story's a Vietnamese story, that's where you're going to do it. And you do have a long history of, cinematography and doing a whole lot of other things. And then when Owl and the Sparrow, when you did that, you won, like, a whole lot of awards came with that. So did that make you go like, okay, you know what, now I'm just going to write and direct?
Yeah, basically, I think the first feature, I don't know how it is for other filmmakers, but the first feature for myself, it was like, let's give it a shot, and there was very low expectations. It was a film very much under the radar that was self-financed. And then once it started winning awards and I got representation in Hollywood, then it was like, okay, I guess I have the talent to tell stories, so I'm just going to write and direct now. And it's still challenging. I mean, whatever you do creatively is always going to be a challenge, but it's nice to be validated and have the recognition and the awards to say, all right, you can tell stories. Can you keep it up?
You know how to do it.
Yeah.
Somebody says you can do it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's really hard to make movies, and it's even harder to make good movies. So when you can pull it off and do it, I think that you're really valuable. So you try to kind of keep it up if you can.
So let's move on to Saigon Electric, which is, we're here for the release, DVD release. So what made you want to do this story? Because like you say, things capture your attention in Vietnam and you're going like, I got to write a story. So what was the inspiration for doing this one?
For me, what interests me, if I'm going to do a film about Vietnam, one of the most interesting things about Vietnam is that it's not a country of war anymore. It's a country of modernization. So I thought, if I'm going to do another film, let's address that modernization. Let's look at what young people are up to nowadays. Let's explore a little bit of like a young love story and really kind of get into the psychology of what the youth is all about in Vietnam now, and emulating youth culture from overseas through the internet. So one of the phenomenons of Vietnam is that hip-hop has been kind of really trendy in the last 4 years, and it's kind of really been this new explosion. And I said, okay, if I'm going to do a teen film, let's make it a fun teen film, and let's have some dance, because hip-hop is something that's very, very new in Vietnam.
Right. And like you say, and it shows this is what Vietnam is, the whole modern thing. And so then you win more awards. So you're getting more validation, right? So what's next?
Well, I have a passion project. If I have one more film to do in Vietnam, it's a passion project about soccer. So just the same way that I'm not a hip hop dancer, I'm not a soccer player, but I know that that's a very much a phenomenon and a craze in Asia. So that's a world that I'd like to kind of tap into. So there's a script that I wrote a couple years ago that's been kind of finding its way to get funded. There's that. I'd like to do a thriller in France. Being bicultural, I tend to kind of be, I guess, I try to be a man of different worlds. So I've been wanting to do a film in France for a while now. So maybe that's going to be the next one.
You have something written for that, or that's just...
That's kind of brewing. Yeah, that's kind of brewing right now. But I would love to, I know, just the same way that I've done a couple love letters to Saigon, I'd love to do a love letter to Paris, as a feature film.